Hi there. Draft summer continues in the deep end, July 16th, 716. Mike Shope, Adam Krautwurst. Adam has the reins tonight in the Fantasy Pros Championship. Our guest, Matthew Collar, Purple Insider, former colleague of ours, and not to bury the lead, but author of the great book on the history of Pro Football Focus. Let's get going. 8:30 start, and we're on the clock at 1:04. I should say Adam is. Welcome to the deep end. Here's to a great night.
Oh, yes. Love it. We're going to be intentional tonight. We're going to take our guys. It's for the content. I'm ready to have a draft here. I'm ready to show off for Matt tonight. Okay, that's what we're going to do.
And I'm not sure what I'm doing here. So someone will have to tell me. I clicked the link. I arrived in this box. And now I'm here for something.
It's a fantasy football draft.
You be here, and you will do a great job enlightening us on the Vikings, giving player takes, throwing shade, whatever it is called these days, to critique Adam's performance in this Fantasy Pros Championship draft. Matt, this is a $350 entry where you can win $1 million. Oh, wow. You're playing in a 12-team league. You have to graduate from that through the regular season, then advance week by week, the sprint in the postseason, as the fantasy players call it, the sprint. And then somebody's going to finish first and win a lot of money. And so here's to Adam's chances. I'm going to sit this one out, by the way. He and I do a lot of these drafts as partners, but this one is all Adam. And later in the summer, we'll do the same thing. And it'll be all me. And he'll invite a guest, and maybe it'll be someone that's wrote a fine book. But that's the standard, I guess.
You know, for somebody who wrote a book called Football is a Numbers Game, my numbers analysis of fantasy is awful. I think I'm really bad at it. And I'm just getting back into playing fantasy this year after taking most of my life off because I was so horrendous. So I'm the perfect person to analyze whether your picks are good or not, I think.
Yes, Adam's picks. That's right. I would disagree if you were saying mine, but Adam's, I think, yes. So, Adam, your word for tonight's draft was to be intentional. And you're picking at 104, McCaffrey 101 as usual, Lamb 102, common, Bijan Robinson at 103. When you told me you were taking a running back at 104, I mean, you were never going to get left out.
Correct. And that is crazy that we have to get, thinking in the landscape we're in where receivers just go like wildfire. You'll see here as 4 or 5 now have gone in a row. The fact that I have to get into the top 4 to get a top 3 running back in 2024 is pretty wild, but that's kind of where we're at. Cause I think everyone is kind of a flat tier. It's a good tier, but it's a flat tier. Hill, Chase, Brown, Jefferson, like they could all be wide receiver 1. And so everyone sees the tier at running back kind of dying off after Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson. So I was happy to get, when I said the intentional, I meant I was taking a running back. I didn't care which one it was. I love Breece Hall. So I was happy to get Breece Hall there. And here go all the running back or all the receivers. Sorry.
Matthew, your thoughts on the state of things at running back in the NFL? We have both had this trend where running backs in the draft have been basically slighted, and they're getting drafted later to the point where maybe the Saturday picks are like good bets to be relevant in the NFL as rookies. But also you had a number of, quote, older free agents this year get paid, Barkley, Swift, and others. So where do you think, this is also a reference to PFF and the work you did covering them, where do you think the league is right now with respect to running back value?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I was just talking to our friend Aaron Schatz today. He was on my show. We were recording and we were talking about how years ago, Aaron Schatz was advocating for running back duos and maybe only having so many carries for running backs, even if they were good, but not giving them 380 like the Marcus Allen load in 1984 or whatever. And he was a big proponent of that. And especially during that time when he was first starting Football Outsiders around 2005, 2006, that's your Sean Alexander, your Larry Johnson, your guys that are getting beaten into the ground. And I think that the NFL has really adopted that, which makes it harder. There you go. Which I was explaining to my wife just last night.
I'm sorry.
About how Marcus Allen was had a reduced role because he was too famous for Al Davis to handle. And this is hard for someone to comprehend in the year like 2024, that once upon a time, an owner just decided, you're too famous, you're playing fullback, and there was nothing that the player could do about it on a day where Brandon Ayuk demands a trade. Like, it just did not exist then. But from a fantasy perspective, it's hard to find a guy who's just going to get all the carries and the ball all the time, because teams are handling this smarter. But also on the other side, I think that it's swung probably too far the other way, where there is a major difference between the excellent running backs and the bad running backs. And when you're getting Aaron Jones, if you're the Minnesota Vikings, for what did they pay him? $7 million, $8 million a year.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great deal. And even with Saquon Barkley, I think he'll fit really well in Philadelphia. And if Saquon Barkley is in a good situation, he could be a well above average running back for not that much money when you compare to Justin Jefferson making $35 million. So I think that teams have gone maybe so averse to this that it's caused it to be a little bit of an inefficiency that can be taken advantage of by some teams.
Brees Hall to Adam at 104. He's on the clock at 209. Jonathan Taylor into the first round tonight at 112 after 7 straight receivers, including Justin Jefferson at 108, who we will talk about with the host of Purple Insider, Matthew Collar. Host is maybe not strong enough.
There's a lot. Host is fine. Owner, editor, writer, hosts, producer, everything.
I just won an imaginary prop predicting that Adam would go Mark Andrews at 209. I love it. So Matthew, on this site, FFPC, all their tournaments, all their leagues, tight ends get 1.5 points per catch. And that really tilts the equation when it comes to value. And it's not unusual to see 5 tight ends go in the second round, which we have tonight. In fact, when Adam and I did a draft with other experts, I mean, not to say that I'm an expert, I certainly wouldn't say that, Adam is. We saw the same thing happen. 5 tight ends go by pick 20. So Laporta at 13, Kelsey at 16, Kincaid at 19, Andrews 21, McBride 22 is pretty much par for the course. What happens at tight end after that is going to be interesting. I would guess, I'm not sure this will be Adam here, but that somebody, because there are so many teams involved in an effort to win the big money, you're playing against thousands of teams, somebody will probably pick 2 early. And that would get us to Kyle Pitts, Ferguson, Njoku, Engram. Am I leaving somebody out, Adam?
No.
Okay, that's 6 through 9. So Adam goes Jalen Waddle at 3. And also, who is playing whom in the playoff weeks in fantasy football? 15, 16, 17 is also relevant. Adam, you don't have that with Hall, Andrews, Waddle, although I have been confused more than once this year because of Andrews and Waddle meeting in week 17 last year, but not this year. Still, though, you have division correlation with Hall and Waddle, and, that's not nothing.
Correct. Yeah, no, I like that. I think they're both going to challenge the Bills for the top of the division, but I really wanted to get a running back early, and I was even willing to take 2, and ideally, I would have been 2 running backs and a tight end here early. I was hoping after getting Andrews, I could get Henry or Achane. Didn't happen. I loved the start from team 2, Lamb, Henry, Achane, because after that, I really don't love a lot of the running backs these next couple rounds. So Andrews, again, tight end premium. He could certainly finish tight end 1 this season. And Waddle, I really like as wide receiver 14. Obviously, his ceiling's capped with Tyreek there, but it also helps him to be consistent. If he's healthy, I like him to finish as a top 10 fantasy receiver this season.
So you would have picked Henry or Achane at 3-4?
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting. Running back not lately, Adam.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's because no one likes the dead zone running. Like, you just don't. And here's the thing too. We're in a dead zone of no camp news, no camps. They're just kind of rookies are kind of showing up today. No injuries, thank God, stuff like that. it's kind of been in a lull for lunatics like us who've been drafting. Like there's just nothing to change ADPs. And so we're trying to mess with different things. But I think once you get some injuries to the running back position and stuff like that, some camp news, camp battles, stuff will move around. But I think Henry, you can project for double-digit touchdowns. Achane, when he's healthy, can be a top 5 running back every week when he's out there. And so I really like the sound of that too.
Interesting. So here in the deep end in the Fantasy Pros Championship, Adam starts, Breece Hall, Mark Andrews, Jalen Waddle, Matthew Collar, our guest, Purple Insider, the great book about PFF. Justin Jefferson, Matthew, at 108. So he's wide receiver 5. Jefferson was going 101 last year in fantasy drafts. Cousins gone, uncertainty at quarterback. That led to a push down. You have Lamb and Tyreek Hill, who came off Offensive Player of the Year caliber seasons. Now you have not only who the quarterback is, but the Addison arrest, which might, who knows, you always try to analyze these things in our game, open Jefferson up to more targets. Plus you have a Hawkinson injury. There are a lot of balls in the air with Minnesota. Like, how do you feel about Jefferson in terms of production, say, versus last year? And he has a contract.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible to pump the ball too much to Justin Jefferson, and I believe the head coach of the Vikings feels the same way. Their entire offense is all designed, everyone's role, everything that everybody else does, to either throw the ball to Justin Jefferson on every play or use Justin Jefferson to create someone else to be wide open. And, it works pretty well over these last couple of years. But the first option on every single play is Justin Jefferson. He's not, didn't we hear that once? What was it? Sammy Watkins is a decoy. You know what? If you got Justin Jefferson, there's no such thing. You design every play to go to Justin Jefferson. And this is Kevin O'Connell's superpower as a head coach, because every team, every week knows that the ball is going to Justin Jefferson. And yet he seems to be really excellent at making certain things look like they did the week before and then changing something. So this one is a slant. The next one is a double move. This formation is this certain route combination, but then it's flipped the opposite way the next time. Like things like that I think he's really good at game planning different ways to get Jefferson open, to where we've almost never seen anyone truly be able to shut down Jefferson. I can actually remember the games where he didn't go off because there've been so few. There was one against Detroit early in O'Connell's time, and then one against Green Bay where he wore the wrong cleats at Lambeau and was sliding around and couldn't get away from Jair Alexander. But for the most part, this is what their offense is. It's not run first. It's not run in play action. It is shotgun, throw to Justin Jefferson offense. So whether it's Jordan Addison is suspended or playing, or whether it's TJ Hawkinson is injured or playing, the ball is going to Justin Jefferson. And I've been asked quite a few times about, well, if it's Sam Darnold, won't he throw it into the stands and not into Justin Jefferson's hands? And I would point you toward what Nick Mullins did last year when he was starting. He threw for about 800 yards in 2 games. And I don't know that he targeted anybody else. He just threw it to Justin Jefferson every play, and it worked. And Sam Darnold is a very aggressive quarterback. It's actually the biggest problem of his career is that he's overly aggressive. But when he played with DJ Moore, he threw to DJ Moore a ton all the time. DJ Moore had big numbers when he was playing with Sam Darnold. So I think from a fantasy perspective, we shouldn't expect any sort of drop off for Jefferson. In fact, I think bad quarterbacks, if that's what Sam Darnold ends up being, I think they lean on their number one receivers even more than good quarterbacks who tend to maybe distribute the ball a bit. But Jefferson is somebody that I don't think there's almost any circumstance that can take him off of where he is, because I've always likened him to Julio Jones in that there's no answer. It's not like you could just take away this, or if you do play this sort of coverage, there was data on this from PFF about if you play zone, if you play man, it doesn't matter. Jefferson still has the best numbers in the league.
The combination of, and I'm going to predict who Adam is going to take here, but he's on the clock. I don't want to say it until he does it. He doesn't like this player this year, but I feel like Simpatico here is going to do it. Yep, Diggs. The combination, Matthew, of the point you made about Jefferson and Darnold, all those things wrapped together, plus like bad quarterbacks leaning on their wide receiver one, plus when you have a coach, as you mentioned already with Kevin O'Connell, proven to be sort of pass first, maybe more than any other coach in the league. Like Minnesota sounds to me in fantasy land to be sort of the most trusted when it comes to lean into, passing. And even the signing of Aaron Jones doesn't stand in the way of that at all, because he's always been a great pass catching running back. So we'll get back to that. Adam, I love Diggs for you there because of Andrews. I was looking at your queue and sort of thinking that even though you're not so hot on him this year, I think Baltimore, Houston, that's week 17. And you have all AFC here, if that matters. The Jets and the Dolphins both play Houston. We try to memorize that stuff, Matthew. You probably don't have to do it, but you can, as a hobby, memorize the entire NFL schedule. Adam coming up here at 5:04. His team so far: Breece Hall, Mark Andrews, Jalen Waddle, Stephon Diggs in the Fantasy Pros Championship at the FFPC. Adam, what are you looking at?
Yeah, I think I like Diggs because I think he'll be the most consistent receiver there. There's a lot of receivers, a lot of balls to go around there. I'm going to get one of the two guys I like here, and I either want Higgins or Flowers, and now I have to choose between either of them. I think I'm going to go Zay Flowers to stack.
Easy call, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun when that kind of plays out. I got Flowers at a little bit of a discount, I think. If I pull up the ADP from Mojo, he usually goes to 4-1. So I got a couple picks of discount there, but that's what I was thinking. I wanted a running back and a tight end early, and then I wanted to be able to sneak in three receivers that I like, and I really do like. Flowers could be, Andrews and Flowers are, I think, the no doubt number 1 and 2 pass catchers there, and with Derrick Henry in the backfield, like he's not stealing any targets, so. I feel like there's going to be plenty to go around there for the MVP to throw to.
The two-time MVP.
The two-time, that's right.
99 out of 100 possible votes in those 2 years. The one being Aaron Schatz, the aforementioned Aaron Schatz, who voted for Josh Allen in 2023, and I wouldn't blame him for it. Before we get back into this draft, round 5, Adam Krautwurst, Matthew Collar, I'm Mike Schoch. This is The Deep End. Now, a word from our sponsor.
Hey, you're in your fantasy draft and someone says, hey, that guy's injury prone. I don't want him. And you're like, I don't know. I don't think you can predict injuries. Well, guess what? Now you can. Injury proneness is real. At Player Profiler, we have the data on these players, and it's all in the Injury Finder app. Their injury track record back through time, exactly where they were injured, how severe it is. We look at the BMI data, and we crunch it all together, and we give you probabilities that a player will miss multiple games this NFL season, as well as the complete database of NFL injuries and the ability to compare two players and look at their injury track record. The Injury Finder is powerful, and it's only $5. If it's worth it to have that peace of mind when you're drafting, go get it.
Listen, someone needs to look at my BMI data because I'm never hurt, ever, okay? Just be overweight and not athletic enough to pull a muscle, and you'll never be hurt.
See, I was going to say that guy is like, now that I am approaching 40, that guy is me waking up every morning. Just, all the different ailments. Actually, for my job, that could be pretty helpful to be able to know all the histories. Because sometimes we get into, all right, this guy's banged up. How often has he been? Whatever, just even as good information there. So,
Daddy, are we taking your car or Mama's car? Well, son, we're taking the car where when I get into it, I make a noise. And we also call that a good stretch. And that would be my car. Yeah. That's where I'm at. So, we could talk about visceral fat in Tanita at our next meeting. But, BMI, sure. Good information from Player Profiler. Definitely check that out. Down the road in round 5 here on the Deep End Fantasy Pros Championship. And we have, Matthew, let's just call it to be soft, the Jordan Addison situation. We've talked about what that might mean for Jefferson. What does it mean for Addison? How many games? What does it look like? And what happens when he's out?
I think it's hard to say exactly as far as how many games, but the guess I can give is that the NFL kind of likes 3 weeks for DUIs. But when they like that, I have no idea, because that could depend on police reports, charges. When does this all come out? Sometimes the police don't act really quickly on something if they're investigating it, or if there's just whatever red tape that's slowing them down, or maybe the police in California have better things to do than deal with this. I don't know, but that is a step for sure, because when it comes to NFL punishment, I think it still applies. There used to be the joke of spin the wheel of Roger Goodell and where does it land? But the Vikings had a separate DUI issue with their offensive coordinator last year, and they suspended him for 3 weeks. Now, that was a team suspension, but I think that they did it to avoid the NFL having to step in, sort of, you do it or we'll do it. And that could end up being the case here with Jordan Addison. But does that come week 1 through 3? Or is it week 12 through 15? Or is it 2025, week 1 through 3, when the case is finally settled and in the books, or whatever it might be? I didn't know you could suspend an offensive coordinator in the offseason and have that count as some sort of punishment. It's honestly one of the most ludicrous things I've ever heard in my life, that was allowed to happen. So I honestly don't know. If you told me that he played 17 games, or that if he was suspended at the beginning or middle of the season, I wouldn't be surprised by any of those things. I do think that there is the extra layer of Kyrie Jackson dying in an accident that included alcohol involved. And then a few days later, just how thoughtless can you be? But everyone is on edge. Everyone is upset. Everyone is angry within the organization about what just happened. And then to do that just pours salt in the wounds of everybody. So it could be that the team decides to say, we're going to suspend you, and then the NFL doesn't have to, or they could just leave it up to the legal system. I really don't have a good sense for this. And if he does get suspended for 3 or 4 games, then Brandon Powell, Jalen Naylor, and a host of other people. You're somewhat familiar with Trent Sherfield and his stylings more than I am. I've only seen him in minicamp, and he didn't do a whole lot for the Bills last year. It's a very light group beyond Justin Jefferson. So if Jordan Addison is out, they better hope it's when TJ Hawkinson comes back, because they really don't have anyone proven behind those 2 starting wide receivers.
Not to try to get into the weeds with this either, because I think the NFL largely is, all right, what are we going to do here? A little bit sort of fly by night. And it often or usually drags on quite a long time with these things. Think of Alvin Kamara. But, Addison had a previous offense going 140, and he blamed it on that his dog was ill and had a dog emergency, so he needed to speed to get to the vet or whatever it was. And I'm not even sure if that counts against him in a sort of a logistical sense as NFL punishment goes. But his ADP, as according to Fantasy Mojo, in recent drafts is pick 90, which would be mid-8. And we're in the late 6th here. Adam goes Deontay Johnson in the 6th round, pick 6-9. And you're looking at, Matthew, I think what a lot of people in fantasy football these days consider sort of the ideal structure, which is to load up on wide receivers. Adam was, as he called it, intentional, picking a running back at 4. He was going to do that no matter what. I mean, not if they went 1, 2, 3, right, Adam? You were
right. Yeah.
Gibbs at 4 or something. But Hall, Andrews, and then I think an experienced player's instinct at that point is, okay, I got to get yellow. And so he did that 3 through 6. We'll see in 7. Lamar Jackson, Adam, was never coming back. His recent ADP is pick 61. That's exactly where he went here. So you had to maybe be hoping for Jackson, but it was always unlikely. And I think I know what you're going to do in 7, by the way.
Yeah, I really wasn't looking to take Jackson. I don't think you need to stack, really. I mean, it's fine if you don't want to reach for it, but it's not best ball, so I don't think you need to stack. Deontay Johnson's a guy that I liked early on. It's the early beginning of July. We were drafting back, we've been drafting since the Super Bowl. But he's a guy, and I kind of got off him a little bit because there was no positive buzz. And then I just listened to the Panthers preview with Dwayne McFarland and Ian Hartitz doing great work over there at Fantasy Life. And Dwayne's just all about, like, the guy's always open. All those numbers and analytics say the guy was like top 5 in getting open for a receiver 3 out of the last 4 years. So I feel like them getting back to him getting traded there, them forcing the ball to him, he could easily be a wide receiver.
Can I call this?
Yes.
Richardson.
Ding, ding, ding. Anthony Richardson.
2 for 2, Matt.
It's like we do this together or something.
It's like we do this every week.
Weirdest thing. So that's actually the guy that I wanted to come back to me. It wasn't Jackson. And if Richardson went, I was fine with it. It's funny. I flip-flopped. The ADPs are Richardson and then Johnson kind of in the same spots. But I was okay losing out on Richardson because it does make me nervous. I do have to spend a little bit of a higher pick on a backup.
And you could have had Stroud if you wanted with Diggs and the Andrews and Flowers bring back for week 17. So yeah, I like that move. You get your 4th receiver, and then if you get to Richardson, you showed the patience there that really paid off for you, I think.
It's funny too. These first 3, they've really gone off the board with ADP. Like Godwin went 2 rounds. Godwin went 2 rounds early. Freiermuth went 2 rounds early, which definitely helps when you're trying to, get guys to fall to you. So I'm really happy with the way this is.
I mean, Njoku was on the board.
Yeah.
And they went Freiermuth and Bowers.
And Bowers, yeah. Interesting.
Matthew, thoughts?
I am with the fantasy community on Anthony Richardson.
Good.
I was semi-obsessed with how good of a prospect I thought he was coming out of Florida, because I watched a bunch of his games and I was very perturbed at their offense and their blocking and their receivers outside of Ricky Pearsall, who was drafted by the 49ers, but it was not the greatest situation. And I thought he handled it extremely well there, despite some of the throwing issues. And the funny thing about Richardson with his throwing was that he would rip a 25-yard pass to a guy on time over the middle of the field and then miss a check down. And my thinking was, I think he can fix the check downs a lot harder than, like, his arm talent is actually absurd. And I don't think that he throws the ball stupidly like Tim Tebow or anything. It's just getting a little touch on the football. And he was an absolute monster. He almost beat Georgia that year. There was one game where his receivers dropped 5 or 6 passes in 1 quarter. I mean, he went through a lot there in college, and I wasn't sure where he was going to be drafted in the NFL. And I was among all the people who thought, sit him for a year, develop him, whatever. But in much like Josh Allen fashion, he comes in really quick as a starter and looked totally in command. The passing's not perfect, but I look at, with a young quarterback, the command of the offense, getting to the line of scrimmage, getting rid of the football on time, making plays when they're there. He looks huge and fast and strong. Everything that somebody could be a star in the league looked like to me. It just comes down to, how's your collarbone? How's your, are you going to go crazy running and not protect yourself and so forth? And that would be my major concern, which I'm sure is the same as everybody else.
And that is really a big question about him this offseason, is what does Indianapolis intend to do differently this year? Do they want to run him less? Is that good for Jonathan Taylor? Is that all just sort of, a guess? You want to check with each one of these situations, and how, like in Buffalo, the Bills have won the AFC East 4 years in a row. If they want to rein in Josh Allen, as they did last year until Thanksgiving, well, they can probably get away with it. And that's exactly what happened. He ran for 15 touchdowns in the end, 3 more in 2 playoff games. Really, they were 6-6, and then, okay, let's go. Change coordinators and put more of an emphasis on that. Indianapolis has not had that kind of recent history. And, we all like this coach, but I don't know how safe he is necessarily. It's a sort of, flighty owner. That might be a nice word for it. So maybe they have to get the absolute most out of their guys. Could be bad for the player. You just want to read all that information and make your best guess. Adam, you have options when it comes to the Colts and stacking Richardson if you want to. Downs is popular, AD Mitchell. I don't know where we're at exactly with ADP. You also have, in a redraft league like this one, which means, Matthew, we're only We're running lineups every week, waivers, all of that. It's not like best ball where, as we talked about on your Purple Insider podcast, once you draft, you're done. In this, it's not like that. You're going to have to beat these people to different, and there are always new players who come up every week that you're going to want to bid on. You could, and I've done it, Adam's done it, sit tight with one quarterback and one tight end, because those backups, the value of those backups are really not much more than you'd expect to find on waivers. I mean, we have 12 teams here. How many quarterbacks will get drafted tonight? 21, maybe somewhere around there. Maybe somebody takes 2 or 3. There'll be a couple of, once you wait on quarterback, you'll want 2. I have a couple of Caleb Williams, Aaron Rodgers teams, just like safe with upside, or Jaden Daniels and Rodgers, or Jaden Daniels and Stafford, pairings like that. Are you thinking about that yet, or is it too early, Adam?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it because, again, I want to be intentional about this, but I've got a plan. And whenever you take, normally if you take if I took Allen or Hurts or Mahomes or Jackson, or even a couple of the quarterbacks after Richardson, I would probably stick with one, or Burrow, something like that. But with Richardson, I'll take a second quarterback, because I want Richardson for the opportunity to break the slate every week in and week out. It's for him to win me $1 million at the end of the year if he's healthy, going for 35 fantasy points a game. But I do have to acknowledge that, yes, he's super injury prone at Florida, super injury prone in the NFL so far. So I don't want to just punt running back if Richardson goes down. I don't want some guy off the scrap heap. I want to kind of predict for that, or project for that, and get it kind of a quarterback in there a little bit earlier. So yes, I am planning for it.
All right, Adam is up, Matthew. Notice he has one running back. In sort of old-fashioned fantasy leagues, this would be very scary, I think, to a lot of players, home leagues, to only have one running back through 7 rounds. But, you want to try to optimize here, and maybe I would say Adam did that, other positions. And you also want to assess the value of the running backs, by tier. And here we are in round 8, where we're seeing Zach Moss, Austin Eckler, Najee Harris, round 7, round 6, going back up. I'm not sure there's that much of a difference in what you would expect from these running backs, like the last 10 who have gone. Adam goes with Javonte Williams in Denver, and that's his first mistake of the night.
I was waiting to defend that. It's funny. I jumped on a group text today with a couple of the Draft Sharks guys, because Draft Sharks has him ranked as the RB21. And I'm like, guys, if he's RB20, well, I'm going to have him in 100% of drafts. He's going as RB30 to 35. What am I missing? What are the people missing? And it's just basically a play on, the coaching staff there. Running backs are very, they get running back points out of these guys. And if he's back to being healthy, last year's coming off an ACL tear, it's always that second year back. He's the most talented running back there. He had a good rookie year. I don't think he's to the moon. I don't think he's the greatest running back ever, but I mean, RB 30. If he can just be healthy and be better, I think he can certainly finish as RB 30, as my RB 2, where I don't need the RB 2 is the least valuable position in fantasy, right? You get your RB 1, your flex is filled, your receivers, your tight ends, and then we can rotate with guys off the waiver wire, with a couple of the next rounds I'm going to pick here. I just think he's a safest week 1 guy. I can throw him in there, and hey, if he's back to his rookie year performance, I'm going to have a top 20 running back on my hands.
Matthew, listen, you know this as well as I do. I don't know why I said that, but never text your ex. Adam's out here texting Draft Sharks to find out. Javonte Williams was never good. New regime, Estime, McLaughlin, Samaje Perine, maybe. Blake Watson, maybe. Off a torn ACL or a multiple ligament tear. I'm out. 100% out on Javonte Williams.
Where though? Where does he got to go? RB 40, or you're just, when you say 100%, you mean nothing, zero. The only teams I might have on Underdog with Javonte Williams on it are like Chase Burrow teams, where they play in week 17, and then maybe you're up. I do want to ask Matthew, while since the guy went, I wanted to ask him, Jordan Addison, you were talking a lot about Justin Jefferson, like how he's going to, so would you be more down on Addison if you think, and I don't disagree with you, that Jefferson's going to get every ball, question marks at quarterback, Hawkinson back the second half of the year, How do we feel about Addison?
I was talking a lot on fantasy shows when I would be a guest that Addison I thought was going to have a huge year. Now I'm a little less high on that idea, knowing that he might get suspended at some point. But when you look at the rest of the group of wide receivers, I doubt most of the public could name even one. I mean, Brandon Powell is a journeyman punt returner who took a handful of reps last year and was pretty decent for them, but not by any means a proven wide receiver 3. And then after that is a guy named Jalen Naylor, who was a 6th round or 5th round draft pick out of Michigan State 2 years ago that had a little tiny flash in a handful of snaps and then has been hurt the entire time since, and even missed some time this year at minicamp. And this is somebody who weighs maybe 185 pounds and is supposed to be a deep threat, but runs like a 4.5. So we're not talking about anybody proven. Then after that, it's Thayer Thomas, who was a drafted baseball player. A little factoid for you. He could compete. Trent Sherfield, who had, I believe, 7 catches last season, 30 the year before. But I mean, it's that's hard to say. What do we got there?
It's a baseball player, Matthew. It's actually Schoolboy Rowe. Schoolboy Rowe.
Okay. Oh yeah. Old Schoolboy Rowe. Yes, Thayer Thomas was drafted as a baseball player, and he's a good route runner, but runs a 4.6. And we're talking about just this group of ragtag guys. Tristan Jackson had 2 catches for the Vikings last year on 4 targets. Lucky Jackson was in the XFL. If you want me to continue, we can get down to Mercer's Ty James, who might be the 90th man on the 90-man roster at the moment. And those are the guys who are the backups. And with TJ Hawkinson, he had an ACL tear and an MCL injury, which meant that they decided to wait till the MCL healed before doing the ACL surgery to make it less complicated. But that meant a longer time before he could have the surgery, which pushed back his possibilities. And historically, you're probably talking about into October before he can play. And I've seen players say, well, maybe week 1 or whatever, a lot of times. But if you don't participate in training camp, you get pretty far behind. It's very difficult to just pop right back in the same way that you did before. So the expectations for Hawkinson aren't even through the roof either. Who are they throwing footballs to? I could see Aaron Jones catching a lot. They like Ty Chandler out of the backfield. They can throw to these other tight ends. They picked up Robert Tonyan, who looked really good at minicamp. He's a guy who's had 50 catch seasons before. I could see them running 2 tight ends more than they did last year, but they're throwing to Jordan Addison. I mean, they drafted him in the 1st round. I thought he had an excellent season last year, all things considered, with Josh Dobbs and Nick Mullins and Jaron Hall coming in and so forth, but was really coming together with Kirk Cousins. And he's another guy they design a lot of stuff for. So I was thinking that he was going to build on that. He's not going to catch as many touchdowns probably because that's just a regression thing, but 70 catches, 900 yards, you could easily see him going over 1,000 if he's in the game. And the other thing I do worry a tad about him is that he weighs about 180 pounds and might have a tendency to get banged up a little bit. He avoided that last year, had 1 injury toward the end of the season. It wasn't too serious, but just in general, somebody that is one of the lightest players in the entire league, you do have concerns that might turn into a thing where he's always playing through something. But other than that, I mean, this is a guy that they were super high on. It's actually funny because I asked Kevin O'Connell in minicamp. I said, well, what do you make of the wide receiver depth battle so far? And he said, well, Jordan Addison's had a great camp. I was like, okay, I got the message.
Yeah,
they're not thrilled with anybody else, and they're going to be thrown to Jordan Addison. So, yeah, I mean, I guess from a fantasy perspective, I would still probably draft him because I have no idea what the suspension is going to be like.
Adam, I think, maybe not germane to this draft, but all the underdog drafts, all the best ball stuff, Tonyan is never mentioned. I mean, what happens in June and July is, I think you just have to try to remember as many different scenarios, depth pieces as there are. A lot of people, Matthew, won't draft even as early as now because camps haven't started and they feel like there's just not enough information yet. I think the very best players who are drafting, Memorial Day forward are not forgetting a guy like Tonyan. And if they do the math on Hawkinson and play the odds, then that's a 6-week plus starting tight end in a pass first offense with not a lot of target options. So, I mean, I myself never think of him in those underdog drafts. You're trying to optimize for the late season, and maybe, that's a guy who won't be relevant in December, but depending on the format, you might get value out of him early on. Adam is into round 10 here, and this is the Fantasy Pros. He's got Mark Andrews. I doubt he's thinking too much about Robert Tonyan, but that's why we're here, Matt. Anthony Richardson, yes?
We just don't know with Robert Tonyan yet, because they have two other experienced tight ends in Johnny Munt and Josh Oliver, but those are traditionally just blocking tight ends. And
Right.
TJ Hawkinson, and I was looking at Robert Tonyan's usage when he was in Green Bay, and he lined up in a lot of different spots. This is something that's valuable to the Vikings offense, where you want to be able to move Jefferson into the slot for a particular thing. You want to get the indicators from the defense to put the tight end out at wide receiver, see if a linebacker goes with him, get that. Are they playing man? Are they playing zone type of thing? That's not really something that you would lean on a Johnny Munt or a Josh Oliver for. Normally they're tight end 2 and you're running play actions and underneath stuff to them. So I think it is possible with Robert Tonyan, but he's got to make the team first before we can really say. I just could see him winning that job and doing pretty well if he does.
Adam. Oh, Jalen Wright. Okay. Matthew, Oliver has good money too, right? They paid him.
They did. Yeah, they did. They liked him. They liked his potential, but also I think they thought that he could resolve their running issues, but he did not. He actually blocked incredibly well. And I think he may have been PFF's #1 run blocking tight end. But if your guards don't block well and your running back isn't good and your coach has no idea, running the football to Kevin O'Connell is speaking French. It's just not his language. He doesn't know when to do it, how to do it, the scheme to do it, when to call the plays to run the ball. And then they had Alexander Madison in the backfield, who is, I think, a decent running back if everything that I mentioned is right. But if it's wrong, he's not going to make it right. And I think they got Aaron Jones to make it right, because they're not going to have that much better of guards. They're either the same guards or a 6th round former tackle is going to come in at left guard. That's not going to change. But they should be better at running the football than they are just overall. I think it's the head coach and his scheme just doesn't lend itself to being great at running.
I love the sound of that, by the way.
What?
Just throwing all the time. Yeah, that's what they do. They play like me and Madden. Just pass every time.
Perfect.
As we await Adam's 11th round pick, Matthew mentioned speaking French. And by the way, if you missed last week's episode of The Deep End with Martin Biron, longtime NHL goalie, check that out. Deep End FF1, Je m'appelle Michel. We are halfway through. Is it 20 rounds tonight or 18?
20.
20, kicker and defense. Well, it's a long night.
Yeah.
Jalen Wright in 10, you're coming up here. I had a different player for you in mind, but he's still on the board with 2 picks in front of you. When do you want me to say it? Or you never want me to say it?
I want you to say it when I'm on the clock.
Okay. I don't know ADP on this player. I'm going to look.
I've got 2 guys queued up and they're both there, so I'm going to get one of them. And I both of them will be fine, because the player that I want, I'll take. If he goes, the player that I'll take will be good for the show. So either one. Okay. So I'm going to take Kendra Miller. But it was between Kendra Miller and Ty Chandler. So I was going to ask Matthew what you think about, can Ty Chandler, there are a lot of smart people are saying Ty Chandler might be the 1B, not just the 2, but the 1B there. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because Aaron Jones is not a 2005 RB1.
Right.
I think if they could make him that, they would. Ty Chandler has jump, juice, explosiveness, where he can make bad blocking good. He can run through people. He can run around people. If you pitch him to the edge, he can beat the linebacker to the corner. And it's a special amount of speed that he has. And when the ball is in his hands, it's very exciting. But also the details to being a running back are missing with him so far in his career. And by details, I mean, he gave up as many quarterback pressures as a pass blocker last year as Aaron Jones has in the last 3 years, maybe even 4 years. So I was looking this up the other day for my running back preview. He's really struggled. There were numerous times where Nick Mullins went to hand the ball off to him and he went the other way, and they had to figure that out on the fly.
no.
That's not what you're looking for from your running back. And otherwise, if that wasn't there and it was just based on his skill with the ball, he might be just RB1 and they might not have gotten Aaron Jones. I mean, for the price, it was pretty good, but they would have them be a duo for sure. But I'm not sure that they can trust him in some of those situations for him to be a 3-down back, which means when he's in, you've kind of got to have him go out on a route or you've got to hand it off to him. It creates a little more limitation. Kevin O'Connell likes to keep his running backs in to block. All that said, is Aaron Jones playing 17 games and carrying the ball 250 times? Absolutely not. And if you go behind him, there is a report that they're going to sign Cam Akers, who tore his Achilles last year, his second career Achilles tear. Hard to see him being a major factor. They drafted a guy in the 7th round named Dwayne McBride. They have a kick returner named Kene Nwangwu who had, I believe, 5 carries for 7 yards or something like that last year. Ty Chandler's the guy. There is no other guy. So I would say that he is a good option because Aaron Jones could get banged up for weeks based on his age. He could regress from where he was last year, or they could just play it safe with him and only give him 50% of the snaps and give the other 50% to Ty Chandler. But the fact that they don't really have anyone else, that would have to mean that Cam Akers came back 100% and was ready to go off an Achilles tear and then beat out Ty Chandler in training camp for RB2. That just doesn't seem possible. And they haven't announced the move yet either. So I'm not even 100% sure he's on the team. So like Ty Chandler is the guy. I think that there's a very good chance he gets a lot of work.
Congrats to Team 11 who picks Chandler at 11-11. Adam, you pissed that you didn't take him after all that? I mean,
I know, that's right. No, I listen, it's between the two of them. I preferred Miller because I think Miller is definitely Miller might even be the goal line back there for all we know right now in New Orleans. But no, I've got quite a bit of Chandler, and there's going to be a lot of movement that, like you were saying, you get Akers here. You know, some running back might end up in Dallas. I mean, there's a lot of teams that just a lot of the backfields like don't make sense right now. Like something's got to happen there. And so we'll see. Maybe even the Giants. They satisfied with just Singletary. So I don't know. We'll see.
I think one thing that isn't to be forgotten is how, we're all talking about and have been for 5 years, running backs not being drafted in the first round, how that gets pushed down. And now you have a collection of very interesting prospects at running back who all went on Saturday, but in round 4 or 5. I think the corresponding logic there is that those players might have real value to their teams, right? I mean, if we all agree not to draft them early because we've read Matthew's book and so on, then, maybe if Buffalo picks Ray Davis in round 4, they don't sign a free agent. They have Ty Johnson. They pick up Frank Gore after the draft is over. That leads me to think Davis is live. Even in a redraft fantasy league, he's a different style than James Cook in Buffalo's case. That's just one example. So I would want to think about that too. Matthew, we've got about 10 minutes left. Before we run out of time, all of this is we're different pieces to the pie. What also matters is what are Minnesota's goals or incentives or motivations for this year. It's a very good division. And the Vikings, moving on from Cousins, drafting McCarthy, are usually seen as, maybe third place at best in that division. Detroit is everybody's darling. Green Bay was so good. Everybody's into Chicago too. What do you think is a good year for the Vikings? And how might that, as we figure out what a player like Chandler is worth, or even Hawkinson, who might miss half the season, if they're 2-6 or something, that could mean something to what they do with him. What does Minnesota want out of 2024?
Well, one thing that I know from covering this team since 2016 is the owners are 1000% anti-tank. They would not ever be accepting of even a week 18 get better draft capital type of tank, to the point where even Mike Zimmer was not playing backup guys at the end of a season when they were out of it, and played to the very last minute of a game against Detroit and Chicago in years that they were out of it to get a win, to make his record look ever so slightly better to the ownership that would make a decision on his fate. And when we talked to the Vikings owners this year at the owners meetings, just one, Mark Wilf, he said that the quarterback change does not change expectations, and their expectations are that they're in the playoffs. I think that's going to be very hard for them because of what you mentioned with the division. It's incredibly good. Chicago, when you have the number one pick, there's always a chance that he's good right away. Their roster is good. They beat the Vikings last year with Justin Fields in there. And then you look at just powerhouses, Super Bowl favorites in Detroit and Green Bay. That's a really tough task. And the Vikings don't face a lot of young or inexperienced quarterbacks this year. I think they have a fairly difficult opposing quarterback schedule. I don't think it's going to be an easy ride. They have to go over to London at one point and play the Jets over there, which is going to be pretty tough when you're playing a defensive team in London where it's always kind of wonky. It could be a rough ride if Sam Darnold or JJ McCarthy is not really good. I think that they have to be average or above average in order for this team to compete for a playoff spot. And the likelihood of a rookie quarterback or a journeyman quarterback who has been one of the bigger busts we've seen over the last 10 years being suddenly average to above average doesn't feel like the most likely thing. Now, watching minicamp, Sam Darnold looked great, and I thought, well, maybe it's going to be Jeff George or Case Keenum all over again. That's you never know with that. But I think that when you're talking about the end of the season is very important. They will fight to the very end. They're going to squeeze out every single win. And I do think coaching is a big thing in the league, and they have a very good offensive and very good defensive mind. My expectation for them, when I picked the W's and L's of the schedule, I got to 9, and I felt like I had to stretch maybe a little bit there. I think they're a 7 to 9 win team because they won't give up. They won't give up on their coach. We know that from last year. The players won't give up on their coach. But I don't think there's enough talent there. Do you think players don't give up on their coach? They definitely
No. I mean, I do think that. I do
okay.
think that.
I was going to say, you made a noise when I said that. I think that they definitely do at times.
I'm watching, I don't want to say my son. I mean, Adam is younger than me, but I'm watching somebody make, an error as my chair sinks like I'm in a Willy Wonka movie or something.
Noah Fant?
Yeah, he hates Noah Fant.
I liked 2 or 3 different guys for you with those 2 picks. I don't get it. Why Shakir?
Over a round past ADP, and he could be the wide receiver 1 in Buffalo this year. What do you mean?
What are the odds? What % chance do you give him to be the wide receiver?
Not much less than the other guys. I mean, are they each 25%? Like what? Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman. I mean, it's.
I have gone to the zoo on that question myself, so I can't throw shade at that. But I don't know. Like Shakir to me is just not that high a ceiling. Fant is interesting. Were you feeling a little bit stressed at tight end?
Yes, I was. And look, likely Otten. I mean, if I wait another round, 6 might go, and then I'm stuck with one tight end that I'm even comfortable rostering. And tight end premium, I don't want to wait that long. So I definitely felt that. And it's funny, Mojo tweeted out, was it today or yesterday, about how Fant's been flying up the draft boards too. Like I took him around maybe half a round early. But yeah, he's moving up boards here. I needed to get a second one. I got sniped on. I probably would have taken Kmet over Jalen Wright a couple rounds ago. I got so there were some other spots I would have taken a tight end, but
why do you think you need a second one?
I mean, tight end premium, and so you can start them at flex pretty easily. So I don't want to discount or discard that. And unlike quarterback, if your quarterback goes down, if Richardson goes down, we talked about earlier, I can find a starting quarterback off waivers. If Andrews goes down, you're not finding, and you wait till tight end, and you only take one tight end, good luck finding like even replaceable value there. Now you might think Fant is terrible, but I was listening to what was I listening to? Ship Chasing, sorry. And they were making a case a couple weeks ago, making a case for him, late breakout tight end. I mean, he's not that old. I mean, maybe 26 or something, but I don't know. I kind of like it. Why do you hate it?
I don't hate it, but I don't think there's enough of a difference, respectfully, between Noah Fant on down and who probably is somebody we didn't think about in like week 2. Like the Rams have 3 or 4 guys. Who knows about Higbee status, Davis, Allen, Parkinson, the Bears with Gerald Everett and Kmet, the Chargers, these teams where Knox even, where tight ends are not getting drafted. And I mean, you don't want to just chase a touchdown. And maybe you're right. If you lose Andrews, maybe you're screwed. I mean, that might be true, but does Noah Fant save you? Maybe he does. I liked in those two. I'm not a Shakir guy either. In those 2 picks, there are 3 players I had in mind. One has been taken, and 2 have not. 2 have not. A.D. Mitchell, that's right. Yeah. 2 have not. So maybe, I don't want to. I'm not trying to talk down to you, Adam. You taught me how to do this.
Oh,
but you could be fine, right? Like if you're in a draft and you end up going over here because you needed something, you felt like you were a little bit, light, and then you're hoping the guys you would have taken otherwise come back to you. That could still happen here, the way I see it. So let's play out these 2 picks, rounds 14 and 15, before we wrap. Matthew, while we wait for Adam to be back on the clock, purpleinsider.com. Numbers is a football's a numbers game, the PFF book, which I listen to continuously on an RV drive from Buffalo to Orlando. And I talked to Matthew before I left. He's like, let me know if you can tell where I started to lose my voice. And I did, but I came away with so much respect for the task of narrating your own book, like how much talking that is. I talk 4 hours a day on WGR with a co-host. That's before coming in the deep end. It's a lot of talking, but not like that. I was just so appreciative of the job Matthew did, not only in the writing, but in the telling of the book. So the website, and what else would you like to, use us to promote?
Yeah, just real quick on that. After the first attempt, after the introduction, I almost quit because it was so difficult to read your own words. And one of the biggest problems is that you anticipate what you think you wrote, and then that's not what you wrote, and you mess it up, and then you have to go back, and you have to go back, and you have to go back. I also edited the entire thing as well. And so that took a long time because I wanted to do it in my studio right here and not go to a studio where I would feel pressured and nervous, and then I'd be sweating and I would mess up even more. So I'm glad that someone actually listens to it on the audio version, because that did take a lot of work. My mom did figure out where I lost my voice. So maybe she's heard me talk a lot, but yeah, really, I mean, Purple Insider, everything, like the website has the YouTube. I've been building that up after putting together this studio this last year. And I mean, just, training camp is really exciting. For me to have a quarterback battle. When is the last one that I would have been any part of? It's probably EJ Manuel versus Tyrod Taylor versus Matt Castle. Yes. Yeah. And we had stock, I think, in each guy. And
right. The Manuel camp literally sold stock on Manuel. You could buy shares of him.
Yeah, and I think this one might be a little more interesting than that one, or a little more nice for the future. But JJ McCarthy is a fascinating prospect. He's one of the youngest players in the league, and he has a lot of physical tools, but there might be a Josh Allen comp there of a guy who just doesn't know how to throw a football accurately yet, but someday, because he's got all the intangibles and everything else. But we could also be surprised by Sam Darnold. We could be surprised by McCarthy. I just have no idea what I'm going into, which is very different from these last 6 years where, okay, Kirk Cousins, the quarterback, you know what you're getting.
Over under 7.5 starts for Darnold.
It's a really, really good number. I've had after the bye week, they play Detroit after the bye week, which I think their bye week is in week 6. They come back from London, and I could see them being something like 2-3 or 1-4 at that time if it goes badly, because it's hard. They play the Texans, they play Green Bay, San Francisco, not in that order at the beginning of the year. I mean, they could easily lose those games with Darnold. So I think it's probably going to be under. If you use all the logic of the past, the bridge quarterbacks barely ever get past the middle of the season. I also think that if any team's going to be patient, it could be them. And if you're going to have a breakout random quarterback surprises everyone anywhere, it's absolutely here. That's the whole history of the Minnesota Vikings. Gus Frerotte makes the playoffs one year. I mean, that's just who they are. But I would tend to think that JJ McCarthy is starting the second half of the season.
Quickly, let's call Adam's pick. That's a tough schedule. And the coach is safe no matter what happens this year, I think, which could play into, like, just give me time with this. They might be a team where they base it on whether they really think McCarthy is ready, not other extenuating circumstances that can basically just mess up a team. I think I know who this pick is. Josh Downs would have been my pick earlier. ADP calls for this. I think, do you want to know?
Yeah. Who do you think?
Tua.
Yes. Did you look at my queue?
No.
You would have taken Tua two rounds ago, right? Over
I would not have, because I would not have wanted a second quarterback as badly.
Yeah.
But it's completely fair. And I mean, that's late for him, not dramatically.
With Waddle.
You have Waddle.
Yeah.
Right.
And Jalen Wright. The thing about Tua that scares me is his numbers over his career, not that it's that long, but his numbers in September, October, they just drop drastically until you get to December, and he's just not even startable. I don't know if he physically wears down, or defenses pick up on them, or his whole team wears down. Tyreek Hill missed some games at the end, or it's the weather. I don't know what it is, but hopefully I won't need him in the playoff weeks. Hopefully I'm riding in Anthony Richardson there.
I really like this team, Adam. I think you've done great. You're not done. The show is almost over, but I mean, right? If you start running back tight end, you got Richardson at value, those middle running backs we all love. I mean, it's 2 rookies and a second year guy, a third year guy, and Javonte Williams. I think you're probably pretty happy.
Yeah, I mean, again, we just don't know. Like Matt was saying earlier, like you just don't know what these guys are going to do. But I had a plan. I came in I wanted my first 2 picks that I rolled there. I wanted Deontay Johnson in the 6th round. I wanted Javonte in the 8th. I wanted Corum and Jalen Wright, like guys that are an injury away from being incredible fantasy studs. And so that all worked out. And then kind of the second half of the draft, you just kind of wing it, because you're probably going to drop a lot of these guys anyways. So I'm really happy with being able to kind of just the way that the kind of the draft played out there. I think it worked out well.
But have you considered, or did you consider, Emlyn Tunnel?
I didn't have him queued up. No, I did not.
What a mistake.
What a mistake.
That's right.
What a mistake. The legend, Emlyn Tunnel.
Yep.
Hats off to that guy. I want to welcome him to the show. Matthew Collar, what a great privilege it was for us to have you tonight. Thank you. And I don't know if the draft was that interesting to you, but we learned a lot from you about the Vikes and football in general, as always.
Well, I appreciate it. I had fun, and I am not of the expert level to even heckle your picks, but I will say that I totally agree with your Deontay Johnson take. I think that he, just looking at the numbers, he is an analytics darling. He gets open constantly, but his quarterbacks have been horrendous. And the Bryce Young, they want him to succeed. They're going to give him a lot of easy passes, and that guy's going to be the guy who's catching him, because I don't think it's going to be Adam Thielen in the same way it was last year. So there is my take that I will leave you with my favorite pick of your night. And
love it.
I wish you the best of luck the rest of the way. Thanks for having me, guys. This was really fun. I really appreciate it.
Much respect to Thielen, who broke fantasy leagues last year, that first half. I mean, what a player he was for Minnesota. He kept it going last year. We'll see. But, yeah, I agree with that too. Thanks to Matthew Collar for being on. We will tweet the full draft once it's over. either tonight or tomorrow morning in the Deep End at Deep End FF1. Follow us through the Player Profiler Network. Mike Shope, Adam Krautwurst. Good luck the rest of the way, Adam, and thanks for watching and listening, everybody, and thanks to Matthew. Good night.
Thanks, guys.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.